The stakes in Outlander Season 8, Episode 5 reach a level that feels both personal and historical at the same time. This episode doesn't just move the story forward. It puts the characters right in the middle of one of the most intense moments of the American Revolutionary War, the Siege of Savannah. And at the heart of it all is Roger Mackenzie, whose survival becomes one of the most emotional arcs we've seen this season. From the very beginning, the episode establishes a tone of urgency and danger. Savannah is no longer just a destination, it's a battlefield. The air feels heavy, uncertain, and unpredictable. And what makes it even more intense is that this isn't a fight where everything is clearly defined. There's chaos, confusion, and a constant sense that anything could go wrong at any moment. For Roger, this is a turning point. Throughout the series, Roger has always struggled with the idea of being a man of war. He's not like Fraser, who carries the instincts and experience of a seasoned fighter. Roger's strength has always been in his compassion, his intellect, and his ability to think beyond immediate conflict. But in Episode 5, he doesn't have the luxury of staying on the sidelines anymore. He's in it. And the siege forces him to confront that reality head-on. What the episode does so well is show the difference between surviving and fighting. Roger isn't portrayed as a traditional hero charging into battle. Instead, his survival feels grounded, almost accidental at times. He's navigating chaos, making decisions in the moment, and trying to stay alive in a situation that's far beyond his control. And that's what makes his storyline so compelling, because it feels real. War in this episode isn't glorified. It's messy, unpredictable, and terrifying. The sounds, the confusion, the lack of clear direction, it all adds to the sense that Roger is completely out of his depth. But instead of breaking him, it reveals something else: resilience. Roger may not be a natural soldier, but he's not weak. He adapts. He endures. And in doing so, he proves that survival in a moment like this isn't about strength, it's about determination. At the same time, the episode doesn't isolate Roger's experience. It constantly reminds us of what's at stake emotionally, especially when it comes to Brianna Fraser. Back at the Ridge, or wherever she is positioned in this part of the story, Bree's perspective adds another layer to the episode. She doesn't know exactly what's happening in Savannah, but she understands the danger. And that uncertainty becomes its own kind of tension, because waiting can be just as painful as fighting. Bree has always been strong, but this episode highlights a different kind of strength: the ability to endure, not knowing. The ability to hold on to hope when there's no guarantee of a positive outcome. And that emotional weight builds throughout the episode, making Roger's survival feel even more significant. As the siege intensifies, the episode leans heavily into the historical reality of the moment. The Siege of Savannah was one of the more brutal and chaotic confrontations of the war, and the show doesn't shy away from that. It's not just about strategy. It's about confusion, miscommunication, and the human cost of conflict. This is where the storytelling really shines, because instead of focusing solely on large-scale action, the episode brings us into the experience of the characters. We see the fear, the uncertainty, the moments where everything feels like it's falling apart. And through Roger's eyes, we understand just how overwhelming it all is. There's a moment during the siege where everything seems to reach a breaking point. The lines blur, the situation becomes almost impossible to navigate, and it feels like there's no clear way out. And in that moment, the question isn't whether Roger can win, it's whether he can survive. And that shift in focus is what makes the episode so powerful, because survival becomes the victory. When Roger does make it through, it doesn't feel like a triumphant moment in the traditional sense. It feels earned, hard-fought, and deeply emotional. He hasn't come out of this unchanged. He's been tested in a way that forces him to confront who he is and what he's capable of. And that brings us to one of the most important parts of the episode: the reunion between Roger and Brianna. This moment isn't rushed. It's given space to breathe, and that's exactly what it needs. Because this isn't just about two characters seeing each other again. It's about everything they've been through leading up to this point. The fear, the uncertainty, the distance, it all comes together in a moment that feels both relieving and emotional. Bree's reaction says everything. There's relief, yes, but there's also the weight of what could have happened. The realization of how close she came to losing him. And for Roger, the reunion carries its own emotional weight. He's returning not just as the man he was before, but as someone who has faced something life-changing. And that changes their dynamic in subtle but important ways. There's a deeper understanding between them now. A shared awareness of how fragile everything is. And that makes their bond feel stronger, but also more grounded in reality. The episode also uses this reunion to reinforce one of its central themes, the cost of war. It's not just about the battles themselves. It's about what those battles do to the people involved, how they change them, how they reshape relationships, priorities, and perspectives. For Roger, the siege is a defining moment. It forces him to step into a role he never fully embraced before. Not necessarily as a warrior, but as someone who understands what it means to stand in the middle of conflict and come out the other side. And for Bree, it reinforces the reality of the world they're living in. This isn't a life where they can remain untouched by history. The war is here. It's real. And it's going to continue to impact them in ways they can't fully predict. As the episode moves toward its conclusion, there's a sense that this is just the beginning of a larger shift. The siege of Savannah isn't the end of the conflict. It's a step toward something bigger. And that's what makes episode 5 so important. It's not just about what happens. It's about what it means for the future. Roger's survival changes how he sees himself. His reunion with Bree strengthens their bond, but also deepens their understanding of what they're facing. And the larger context of the war continues to build, reminding us that the challenges ahead are only going to become more intense. In many ways, this episode represents a turning point for the season. The characters are no longer preparing for what's coming. They're living it. They're experiencing the reality of war, the uncertainty of survival, and the emotional toll that comes with both. And as the story continues, those experiences are going to shape every decision they make. Because in a world like this, survival isn't just about getting through one battle. It's about finding a way to keep going, even when everything around you is changing. And for Roger Mackenzie and Brianna Fraser, episode 5 makes one thing very clear. They've survived this moment. But the war is far from over. And whatever comes next is going to test them even more. The stakes in Outlander Season 8, Episode 5 reach a level that feels both personal and historical at the same time. This episode doesn't just move the story forward. It puts the characters right in the middle of one of the most intense moments of the American Revolutionary War, the Siege of Savannah. And at the heart of it all is Roger Mackenzie, whose survival becomes one of the most emotional arcs we've seen this season. From the very beginning, the episode establishes